All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Hilo Orchid Society's first monthly members meeting for 2022. My name is Carl Mendonça and I'll be hosting today's meeting as the new president of the Hilo Orchid Society. First thing I want to do is wish all of our members happy and healthy new year for 2022. And second, I want to give my thanks to Tom Miranda, the outgoing president, and the past board for their hard work and leadership during the pandemic. I guess I just wanted to share, before the pandemic, I was active in 4 garden groups. And during the pandemic, I'm proud to say that the Hilo Orchid Society has done the best in engaging its members and staying active. So one of my main goals is to continue that effort through the rest of the pandemic and hopefully transition maybe later this year to more in-person meetings. I guess in next month's newsletter, I hope to share more about myself and my goals for the club and the society. So keep an eye out for that newsletter in the second week of February. Before we begin with this month's presentation, I do have one announcement to make. With the beginning of the new calendar year, 2022, the Hilo Orchid Society member renewals are due. So if you haven't done so, please renew your membership. You can find the form on this month's newsletter. In that newsletter, you'll find the form. The membership dues are $20 per individual, $20 per family, and the form, I guess the main thing is to complete that form, include your payment and mail it to the address provided on that form. So now for today's presentation, I guess, when planning for this month's presentation, there was a lot of desire to try and engage our members more, kind of like getting their hands dirty. So the idea came up to renew the Orchid Isle project. And at first it was just going to be kind of a short presentation, but so much has happened over the holidays since we were looking at the Orchid Isle project. There's been a lot of excitement and momentum built up over the last couple of weeks. So today's presentation on the Orchid Isle project is going to be expanded in an effort to spread that excitement to our members. I guess the first thing that kind of kicked off this new revision or renewal of the Orchid Isle project was the announcement that Ellen Train will be serving as the new committee chair for the Orchid Isle project. There was some concern of having someone stepping up, and I'm very happy to say that Ellen has decided to take on that challenge. With that, Ellen will be sharing what has happened over the holidays, kind of the excitement and momentum that's been built, and what are her visions and goals for the project, and how our members can get involved. But before we get to that, let's get a little bit of history on the Orchid Isle project. Julie Getch has been a longtime member of the Hilo Orchid Society. She has also served as our past president and actually sparked the idea for the Orchid Isle project. So I would like to pass the floor to her to provide history and go over many accomplishments that the project has completed.
Mommy, could you get
So with that, let's welcome Julie Getch.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. It has been really fun working with this project, and I want to take you all back to 2014. I had been president of the Orchid Society, and I've been on and off of Hawaii Island and all of the Hawaiian Islands since 1969. I think that was somewhere right after the last ice age. But I wanted to let you know that, you've probably seen in the publicity on Hawaiian Airlines and in different magazines and so forth that we are called the Orchid Isle. And you probably are aware that Kauai is the Garden Isle and Maui is the Valley Isle and Oahu is the Gathering Place. And all of them have different, kind of like nicknames for each island. And those were brought up by the Hawaii Visitors Bureau at the time of statehood for publicity purposes and to try to start to create these images of each island as a place that you would want to go and spend your vacation. So they came up with these nicknames for each one. So how did they come up with the nickname for our island as the Orchid Isle? That's a really good question. So Larry, let's start, shall we? Larry's going to flip the slides for us. So a lot of people think that the reason we became the Orchid Isle was because we had some native orchids up in the high cloud forest on Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. And there were 3 of those originally that were such tiny little things, and they were green colored. And they really didn't amount to too much, although the Hawaiians did have names for them. So at least they had recognized them and knew that they were there. But these have become all but extinct. They certainly are threatened and endangered. And unless they're being propagated in captivity, they're gone in the wild. So that, I have to tell you, was not the reason we became known as the Orchid Isle. So Larry, you want to go to the next one? Now, what happened was in about 1932, one of our sugar planters went to a conference in Singapore. And while in Singapore, he was presented with some of these Vanda Miss Joaquim that became later the Singapore national flower. And he was looking at these and thought, Singapore's climate is just about like ours. And I wonder if these wouldn't become a cash crop back in Hawaii. Besides sugar and pineapple, this could maybe become something that we could draw money off of. And so that's what happened. He brought some back and he passed them out to various friends, and they tried growing them. And lo and behold, they certainly did grow well here. And so, next one, Larry. They became grown all over the place, so to speak. And in Lower Puna, some of you may remember these if you've been around longer than most people have at this point in time, but there were field after field after field of these Vanda Miss Joaquims. And they were used to put on airline meal trays and to make lei out of, and for all different purposes. I even found one article that said that it wasn't Macy's, but some big national chain like that had brought in millions and millions of these blossoms to give away at sales that they were having in their stores, and hoping that people would come in order to get a free Hawaiian orchid and be able to say that they had such an exotic thing. Now, these orchids had the capability of lasting a really long time. They didn't fade away and wilt and so forth. And so they were very, very popular. And so lots of people did grow them. Next, Larry. And just about everybody had a little plot of orchids in their yard. And excuse me a second. And so it was told to me by Mr. Yasuji Takasaki that when they were kids, they would come home from school and everybody would go out and pick their little Vanda Miss Joaquims, and they'd put them in big bags or boxes or some such and take them to a central place. And they were consolidated, and millions and millions of these little tiny flowers would go out of here to the mainland and to the airlines, and they became kind of like another crop for us. Now, I don't know that they actually brought in much money, but I think they did. Vivian Ryoka, I should get with you sometime and find out if you have anything to add to this story. You probably remember this really well. If we were in person, I'd have you talk right now, but don't worry, I won't I won't make you do that right now. Larry? Now, this is an aerial picture taken in the area of downtown Hilo, near or right on where Big Island Candies now is. And some of those houses are still there, but a lot of them have been replaced by, Monono Mini Mart and the new shopping center across from Big Island Candies and so forth. But if you look really closely at this picture, you'll see where various houses have little crop spaces in the back. And a lot of those are Vanda Miss Joaquim's being grown by various families and other groups to be, to make a little income. Okay, Larry? And if, well, by the way, if you drive around that area, down in that area where those old time houses still are, you'll still see them. You'll still see lots of places that have the Vanda Miss Joaquim's in their yard. This is one that I took. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was pretty impressed with this clump of Vanda Miss Joaquim's. Is that beautiful? Okay, Larry. Larry? There we go. And so still today, most of those fields are gone. They were taken over by Madame Pele most recently, but not before the orchids were gone, and papayas had been started in those same fields over the years. But still to this day, you will see an occasional Miss Joaquim field. Now this one exists right now, and it's up behind Carmela's orchids in Hakalau or Umauma or Ninole, whichever community you happen to be standing in at the moment. And some of the folks still pick these and make layout of them, but you don't see them too often anymore. Okay, next, Larry. Now, we've tried to honor this orchid because it was the one that gave rise to the whole orchid industry of today. And so at one of our recent shows, we did a few presentations on this orchid, and people began to have an awareness of them. And we've also passed out many of the plants, but we have to be really careful with those plants because they do have orchid virus. They have the Cymbidium mosaic virus. And so if you're going to have them in your yard, you have to be really, really careful not to cut them with scissors or clippers that you're going to use on any other orchids without sterilizing those clippers, because they will spread the virus. In fact, that's how they got virused in the first place. The orchids get quite tall. The plants get quite tall, maybe 6, 7, 8 feet tall. And it became harder and harder for folks like kids to be able to pick those. And so various people went along and they cut them with machetes and just leveled them off at about hand height. And it just happened that there was virus on one of the blades. And so they began to spread, the virus began to spread. And I will tell you that today, every single Vanda Miss Joaquim orchid carries that virus. So if you have any in your yard or you think you might like to, you have to just be super aware not to use the same scissors on that plant as you use on your other plants. Okay, Larry?
Okay, hold on. For some reason, this is not.
A technical difficulty?
Yeah, not wanting to go to the next slide. Okay.
Okay. So then those orchids became, and by the way, those are the ones that made us the orchid aisle, because in about 1958 and 59, when we were going to undergo statehood and the Hawaii Visitors Bureau needed to come up with a name, they remembered all those fields down there in Lower Puna and in other homes around the island. And they said, okay, let's make this the orchid aisle. And so people began to expect to see orchids when they came to the Big Island. Well, then in 1958, I believe it was, there was an international orchid conference held in Honolulu. And some of these big flashy hybrids began to be known. And so the orchid growers who had grown the little ones now were looking at these flashy new ones and said, wow, let's forget about the Vanda Miss Joaquims and let's start hybridizing. And so they brought in many plants that they could use as first generations and crossed those to get these beautiful, new, colorful, flashy, and durable hybrids. So you may recognize some of these. That's the Toshi Aoki. And Larry, I'll let you go to the next one. And then this is look at the number of flowers on this plant. Now this is a Vanda also. But look at the number of flowers on there. And these are long lasting as well. But people began to grow the plants as well as use these for cut flowers. So these flowers made good introductions into the cut flower market, and they were shipped out of here and still are shipped out of here all over the country and all over the world to make cut flower arrangements. And they'll last a long time and people will enjoy them in their homes for probably a couple of months before they have to be thrown out. But they also, the hobbyists and the nurserymen themselves started growing these as well. So we hobbyists today just love to have these in our yards because we can enjoy them outdoors, or we can cut them and bring them into bouquets. Okay, Larry?
More technical difficulties, hold on.
Uh-oh, I like your little beep. Okay, so when I was about done with being president in 2014, I was very aware that we really had some work to do because people were coming to the Big Island and they were saying, well, how come we're known as the Orchid Isle, but we don't see any orchids here? So where are the orchids? Where can we go and see orchids? So I took this to the board, the Hilo Orchid Society board, and I said, we need a project where we're going to go out and put orchids all over this island again. And then visitors who come can find orchids and see them, and the local folks can enjoy seeing them. So we undertook this giant project. The board was very supportive. And for quite a few years, I led the project myself since I was the outgoing president. And we were, at the same time, we were given about 600 of the nobile dendrobiums. And that is a lot of orchids. And so we had a really good time getting volunteers from our own Orchid Society. And people gave us places that they thought we should go and put orchids. And we just had a blast going out and putting orchids on people's property, on businesses and in parks and in public places. And we'll show you some of those in just a minute. This happened to be in the Prince Kuhio Mall not too long ago when they were having a day where what were they doing, Larry? I forget what they were doing, but anyway, we had a big display and we were selling orchids there as well. And then we said, well, we've got 2 other orchid societies on this island and on the Kona side, and we should be involving them. So I went over and did a presentation for the Kona Daifukuji Orchid Club, and they began to get involved in this project as well. And they did a lot. And this little sign and talking about the Orchid Isle project was at one of their shows that they do. They do an annual show at the Daifukuji Temple, Buddhist temple in Captain Cook, Hawaii. And so they're not actually part of the temple, but they do meet at the temple. So you would enjoy having a chance to visit that. And I'll show you a picture from there before long. Now, one of the first projects that we took up with our donated orchids was Kalakaua Park downtown across from the post office. And so we got a team of people together, able-bodied folks that are still able to climb ladders. Some of us are not. And some of us make really good help at holding ladders while somebody else climbs. And so there's Larry and Rick putting those orchids up in the branches of one of the, I think it was a plumeria tree. in downtown Hilo. And so we put quite a number of them in the trees around Kala Park that day. Okay, Larry? And then the gentleman on the left, Bill, I can't remember his last name at the moment, but he was the head of the Downtown Hilo Development Association. And they had come to us and said, we'd like to have you put orchids in the trees along the bayfront. And so on several occasions, we brought orchids, and they had those big planter boxes down there, and we planted some Spathoglottis. That's these purple ones here. And those are wonderful because they are constantly in bloom. And they're wonderful in your yard as well, if you need something that you want color in your yard all the time. But we found out that they're very easy to propagate. And I had an area where I could propagate some. So I made some of yellow and pink and white and rainbow colored. And we gave them out to various organizations that wanted to help with this project. So the downtown development folks came and helped us. And this is a picture that Larry took a few years later. And some of them had done really, really well, where others of them had been hit by a drought that we had right after we planted them on the trees, of course, or placed them on the trees, I should say. And so we did lose a large number of them, but there were some that were very persistent, and they hung on to make beautiful, beautiful blooms. So I really like this one. Okay, Larry? Now, over on the Kona side, there was a large group of the folks from the Daifukuji Orchid Society, and the lady in the very center, in the turquoise top, is Joyce Hancock, and she's a member of that group. And so I would take her whole bunches of orchids in my car, as many as I could squeeze in, and they had groups that would go out and place these. And they did a really cool thing. Just one of many things that they did was to create a meditation garden outside the emergency room at the Kona Hospital. And so they brought in mulch and gravel, and I think they brought in those tree ferns. I don't think those were already there. And they just created this beautiful space with some benches for folks that needed some time to just slow down and think and be quiet. And this is one of the projects that they did. Okay, Larry? And there's Joyce. And this orchid club also puts on a show every year. And I like the way they display their orchids. They don't have bunches and bunches of orchids like we do, but they certainly put on a good show by highlighting each plant that they bring to this room at the Daifukuji Temple. And Joyce has been their leader for the Orchid Isle project. And she came up with bunches of names of places. So we did lots of work over there. And there's Joyce and her friend Betty. The two of them, I tell you, are really good workhorses. Boy, they really didn't lose any energy to this project. They just really kept going. So we decided what we needed. And Rick Kelly, I think this was your idea, that we needed to give an award each year at our show to the group that did the most to promote the Orchid Isle project and to promote our image as the Orchid Isle. So this is Joyce and her friend Betty receiving their plaque. And this was the first year after we got started with the project. Okay, and then also one of the projects where we gave them lots and lots of orchids was the Hawaii Tropical Botanical Garden up at Pepeakeo, between Pepeakeo and Papaiko, right. And so that particular botanical garden, if you have not been there, I think you would want to go. They had a collection of orchids, and they even had a person who was their orchid curator who kept track of the collection. And so we gave them a bunch of orchids, and they continued to expand those orchids into locations all over their property. And this is one that actually did really well and came into bloom. I just love this picture, Larry. This is Larry's picture. That's beautiful. So again, if you haven't had a chance, please go see that tropical garden, and be sure when you go there to look up, not just straight ahead or down, So the next year we gave them the award, the Orchid Isle Award, and that's our Rick Kelly, who I think was president at that time, and he's giving the award to the manager of the tropical garden, and the fellow on the left is the groundskeeper, the head of the groundskeepers. And so they did just a fantastic job taking care of those orchids and making sure that they're still in good shape. So if you visit that garden, I know you'll really enjoy seeing orchids. Okay, Larry? Then on the Kona side, back to the Kona side, this is the Greenwell Coffee Farm. And I was able to get a group of their groundskeepers and their men that work in the nursery that they have there. They're now propagating vanilla, believe it or not. They've started a whole greenhouse for growing vanilla. And if you didn't know, vanilla is an orchid. But these gentlemen, we taught a class to and took them a bunch of orchids to practice with and to put all over their property. And so this is a great big, I think this was an avocado tree. I'm not really sure. Maybe it was monkey pod. But that branch was hanging down at just the right height to put an orchid on. So we showed them how to do it and gave them moss and twine and everything that they needed in order to attach those orchids to trees. They have many, many trees on that property, and picnic tables and places to sit, and a gift shop, places to have a cup of coffee and try out their different coffees. So if you're out and around and you want to take visitors to see something on the Kona side, be sure to stop at the Greenwell Coffee Farm, which is just south of the main Kona kind of Leo crawl, I call it, where the traffic is usually pretty bad, but it's on the right-hand side. And you'll see a sign out in front that says Greenwell Coffee Farm. And it really is worth a trip in there with visitors. Okay, then another one on the Kona side. And this is the Buddha's Cup Coffee Farm. And it is higher up in the cloud forest, pretty much, almost, it's at about maybe a couple thousand feet higher than Hualalai. And they have actually cleared out some space to put roads in and so forth for their coffee farm. Their coffee trees are grown under shade for the most part. And this also makes a great place to take visitors because they have little cart thingies like golf carts, but with 6 seats, and they'll take you and your visitors around and show you all of the way that they grow the coffee and how they take it to be roasted and all of these things, as well as they'll show you lots of orchids that we planted for them. And again, we showed them how to do it. And these are the Kona Daifukuji ladies, and they were planting the orchids that we gave them to plant there at the Greenwell Coffee Farm. And they also showed the Greenwell people how to do it so that we'd have these orchids that would be able to be taken care of as well after we got done. Okay, all right. And this is also a part of the Greenwell Coffee Farm. They have quite an acreage there. And excuse me, not Greenwell, but Buddha's Cup Coffee Farm. And they just have so many beautiful places to put orchids where they get dappled light, the kind of light that the orchids like. And they've too provided mulch to keep the weeds down around the orchids. And this is a cymbidium that was in bloom later that we were so happy to see, had done well. Okay. So later on, we gave the Buddha's Cup folks the award, the Orchid Isle Award, at our next show. I think this is about the 3rd year of the project. And so we give a plaque, and then lately we've started giving them baskets, orchid gift baskets that are donated to us as well, to the people that are responsible for giving us a place to put more orchids. Okay. And then interestingly, this makes another fantastic place to take visitors. But if you know where the Kona Daifukuji Buddhist temple is, right on the main highway in Captain Cook, you are allowed to walk around there, so don't be shy. And in the back, you walk through the temple, and into the back, they have created this orchid grotto. And it was a place where when the lava came down, it's kind of stopped and created sort of a little cliff about maybe 4 feet high. And so there are places in there that made just perfect spots to put orchids, and the orchids absolutely love it in there. It's not too much sun, and yet it's protected from the elements, the wind and so forth. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful place that if you're at the temple for a service of some kind, there are windows all along the side of the temple that look out on this orchid grotto. And it is just the best place for feeling serenity and peacefulness. Okay, Larry? Then the Orchid Club also said, there's this city block that we'd like to redo because it's kind of a mess. There were weeds growing up in those flower beds and dead stuff. And so they got a group of their people to go out of an afternoon. And again, we donated orchids to them from our project. And they're now an equal part of our project. And so they all went out and cleaned up everything, took away the trash, and then planted a whole variety of orchids on those trees that were existing, that were still growing, as well as in the ground. We gave them some spathoglotis for growing in the ground. And they just had the best old time out there. And to my knowledge, they're all still there. The orchids are, and doing well. Okay, Larry? So you can see that, again, they provided mulch and added some of what we just gave them the orchids. So sometimes we give them the twine and the moss also, but then they will provide the mulch for the ground. Okay, Larry? Now, this is a lovely picture because I don't know if you know Carol Zakahi or not, but Carol has a family museum, and it's a house that was a plantation house on the high road into Kona. And it's a great stop off also. She has a little family museum there with all sorts of memorabilia from the plantation days and from her ancestors in Japan that came over with the original family. And Carol decided, she's a member of the Daikakuji Orchid Club, and she decided she wanted to put orchids in the trees out in front of her little museum. And so she did an absolutely beautiful job of it, such a labor of love. So if ever you're traveling on the high road into Kona, on the left-hand side, on the Mauka side, you'll see it's called the TNSZ Connection. And that's a museum that you would love to visit and just take a little walk through. It's just crammed with interesting things. Okay, Larry?
Hold on, more technical difficulties.
Okay. Okay, and then, okay. So this is the group of volunteers that we got in downtown Hilo. Of course, Rick on our left, who's one of our past presidents, and Larry on the right, who's another one of our past presidents. And then Bill, McBride is his name. He was the Downtown Business Association person. And then these 3 young ladies were with AmeriCorps one summer, and they were provided jobs in the downtown area doing whatever was needed. And they came out and just really enjoyed helping us. And they were really good at climbing ladders. So that worked out very well. So we're hoping that now Ellen will be able to get a wide variety of volunteers, and Ellen's going to tell you about the orchids that we've had donated. We've really hit the jackpot once again, and how we're going to extend our image as the Orchid Isle, and hopefully be able to get them placed in even more places. So with that, I will turn it over to Ellen. And unless I'm forgetting something, Larry, Rick, can you think of anything?
Oh, no, that was really good, Julie. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So Ellen is going to be our new Orchid Isle project leader. And I am so happy that she's going to be doing this because Ellen has a lot of enthusiasm and a smile that would knock you out. And so she's going to take the project from here and take it to even higher levels. Right, Ellen?
Yeah. If I can do just half of what you did, but I mean, I'm just like blown away by everything you've done. And I was always curious what the Orchid Isle project was. When I first started it, it was just when I became the membership chair, I didn't know what it was, and it was on the membership paper when you join, asking if you want to be a part of that. And I think that's how Kalapana with Kevin Evans first got the idea that Kalapana Tropicals could donate these orchids so we could restart the Orchid Isle project. I got excited when I heard about that. I thought, orchids, yes, let's get some more orchids. Let's fill Hilo and every place else we can with orchids. It sounded like a great idea. I didn't know where we had any idea where to put. He wanted to give us like 1,000 to 3,000 orchids or so. There's all these numbers being tossed around, and I just said we got to do it, and took 24 hours or 48 hours and realized I have a hoop house that I'm not using, and I could store some there, and then maybe some other members would be interested in it. So we contacted Kevin. He agreed, and everything was during the holidays and during compressed time. That's just the way it was. I don't, that we didn't have much time to do a lot of this stuff. So I put an email out to get, because to get people to carry the orchids from Hilo to Mountain View, because if I had to do that myself, I was thinking that's an hour drive. I won't get many moved. But we got some wonderful volunteers when I sent out a second email at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I was freaking out that we weren't going to have anybody. And luckily people did step in and helped, and that it made it's really something to move all these orchids, and that's how they got up on the and in my house right now. I do need volunteers to help repot some of these, just because I want to get the weeds out and thrown away so they don't multiply further. We've got rabbit's foot fern and the southern sword fern and a lot of these orchids. If you're fairly new or just miss repotting orchids and playing and working with orchids, give me a call, drop me an email. I have 1,000 of them that need to be redone. That's the first place where I need volunteers. The other volunteers that I'm thinking about is just people, if you know some public place where you think orchids would look great, give them a call, find out if it's possible to put them up there, let me know, or I can give them a call if you give me the information. That's one way, one way you can volunteer without having to get your hands dirty. Just pick up the phone and find out. The other place where we need volunteers is actually putting them on the trees. I haven't made any arrangements yet to put these on the trees, because the process is so new, and I'm going to be off the island for half of February, so I didn't really want to start anything and not be here.
So Ellen, so perhaps in the next newsletter, we could put a little something giving people your contact information, so people who would like to volunteer can get in touch with you.
Yeah, that would be really good.
And Larry, also a line where they can put in suggestions for where we can place orchids.
Yes,
in the newsletter. In
sure.
the newsletter, yeah.
Right, absolutely. So we let people know,
Suggestions.
that that's one of the things that we're definitely looking for the Orchid Isle project is this, suggestions for what would be a good place, right, for us to put some orchids on this lovely Orchid Isle.
Sure.
Yes, Kona Orchid Society said that they would take about 10 to 12 trays. We're thinking they have a van that they can take and that will help start up their organization again, and they can start putting them on that side, and we'll go from there with that. my goal is I'd love to get rid of these by April, but I don't know if that's too fast or what, but that's where I see. I don't think I have
Ellen,
much
one more suggestion is that for our own members, and Larry might want to put something in there in the newsletter also, I think you'd be willing to give orchids to our members if they would commit to putting them in their front yards where they can be seen by passersby.
Yeah. Yeah. Then they would have to clean them, make sure they don't get the weeds. But yeah, that's a big thing for us, is to make sure that wherever they go, they stay watered. Yeah,
So Julie and Ellen, I guess now would be a good time there's so much information I was shared that if any of the members have questions, this might be a good break to have some questions. So.
I just wanted to make one comment, Carl and Julie. The Daifukuji is actually in Kaina Leo. It goes
Oh, thank
Kaina
you.
Leo, then Calicocoa, then Captain Cook. So it's right when you get up Malka, when the road takes the turn, it goes from sort of a highway to more of like a country road up there. That's
Thank
where
you
it is.
very much. I always get those communities mixed up because you can't tell where one stops and the next one starts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, this is Ruth. Ellen, I could put your email address in the chat. I just wanted to
Oh, yeah.
double check the accuracy of what I have. Is your email address pecetrain@gmail.com?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to put that in the chat for people.
Yeah. You put my phone number if you want. It's a landline. I don't, or I can put it out there for all that. With the volunteers, we really need volunteers with ladders. I don't have a ladder that I can hang around. I don't mind going up one, but I don't have one.
Any other questions?
This is
I guess
Leanne.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Carl. This is Leanne Garrett. During the pandemic, I made arrangements with Hale Anui Nui to put orchids in their trees. And I had some of my own, some friends had given me some, and then I also bought some from the sales that our society hosted. But there's still a lot of trees that could use orchids. So I would, if that would be one of the sites you folks would consider, I can coordinate with the director when we're ready to start putting orchids in the trees, because I think they would love to have more.
That's a fantastic idea. And when you do that, you might also see if they have groundskeepers that you could teach, they could take over when you were done placing orchids, and then they could also help you put them in the trees.
They do have a groundskeepers, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind being taught how to take care of them, because what I've also been doing periodically is going in and fertilizing the orchids. So
fantastic.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. So I guess, Ellen, I could work with you, or you can let me know who we could work with, and then I can coordinate, and they would love to have more orchids, because the ones that I did put in, I would go back periodically to check to see if they were blooming, and they were. Mm-hmm. And so the residents and the staff enjoyed it because it added color to the property, because it's a well-groomed property, but they really had no color, just lots of green trees but so the orchids added a lot to the property, and then also for the residents, because they couldn't go out because of COVID.
Sure.
They could enjoy looking out and seeing the orchids in bloom on the trees.
That's
another thing that we had done was we had put orchids at the hospital in those center gardens that they have, and one of our members at that time did a cleanup in those center gardens because it hadn't been done, it looked like, in a while. And so we got it all cleaned up, placed orchids in there, and then also around the hospice of Hilo grounds, so that when they take little rides in their wheelchairs and so forth, they have something pretty to look at.
Yeah, Leanne, I'll get back with you about that at Hale Nui Nui. I think somebody suggested that, but I don't see it in my notes, but that name just sounded familiar, but thank you. We'll get going on that one.
Thanks, Ellen.
Rick? No.
So if there's no more questions, we're going to continue with our presentation. I believe Rick has put together a presentation of putting orchids into the trees, which is some of the work that will be done under the Orchid Owl projects. Turn it over.
This is, I just have pictures. I don't have any text or narration to go with it. This was just going to be pictures.
Okay.
So if anybody else wants to talk, if Julie wants to talk, if Ellen wants to talk, that's fine. All I have is pictures.
Yeah, go for a few of the pictures. I think I was gonna talk over while the pictures ran, but that's fine. I think everybody loves orchids, so we can see a few orchid pictures. Let's go.
Okay. So does that show up?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get it. Okay. And Rick, so these are all orchids that are growing on trees, correct? Yes.
Mounted.
Right, mounted on trees, right, which is one of the things that the Orchid Isle Project tries to do, right? Because, right, our island is one of the places where you can do that. You can put orchids on trees, and that's where they love to grow. Right, so all these are growing in my yard on ohia trees.
For those of you that missed the trip a few weeks ago to Rick's yard, oh my gosh, it was a fantastic tour around his property. I think it's 3 acres, is it not, Rick?
Yes, 3 acres.
And oh, it was a fabulous day. And it was at the time when COVID had kind of calmed down a little bit, and he opened his yard up to having us come through and take a look. It was just beautiful.
So we can stop at any time. I think there's maybe 70 or 80 pictures, but we don't have to go through all of them.
Rick, one of the things I appreciate, that last one that you just showed, shows how over time, the orchid will send out more shoots, and pretty soon you'll have a whole abundance of orchids blooming all at the same time. And they're just beautiful when they multiply. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I went in and looked at the Hilo library, and there was some in the courtyard. I could see some orchids, I think, that probably the society had done in the past. And there were 2 places I went. Downtown, I still see some up in the trees, and I'm sure that we put them there.
You know, Ellen, it might be worth an article in the newspaper at some point in time to let people know, let citizens know that we have orchids for donation if they will put them in their front yards or at their church, or, you know, at their school, or wherever they'd like to. We'll provide them with orchids and show them how.
Okay.
Rick, you've got an incredible collection.
A whole lot of these are gone because, ohia trees have died and fallen over.
Wow. Wow.
One thing to mention on putting the orchids in the trees is some people think it's going to harm the tree. And when I've put orchids in my neighbor's trees, that was what they were afraid of. And I had to explain to them it doesn't harm the tree at all. So that's a point that some people are worried about.
You know, it's a good point to mention that. And the biggest thing is not to use wire to wire the orchids up, because that will eventually cut into the tree. So that's why we recommend people use twine or cloth, old strips of t-shirt or whatever. Those are beautiful, Rick, just absolutely gorgeous.
Okay, so it's almost 3, so you want to cut it off here?
Yeah,
I think there's more to come. Okay, so I'll stop screen sharing. Okay,
Yeah.
Right. I also saw several good suggestions in the chat on ideas of where to place orchids. So I've been capturing some of those in my notes. So I think, Ellen, you have one more kind of pre-recorded presentation, right? That your partner put together in light of all this activity with the Orchid and Orchid Isle project.
yeah, did you want me to share screen and do that? I mean, I can, but,
I can share the screen and do that if you'd rather have me.
okay,
do
because
it.
I thought you were, so I didn't set
Yeah.
anything up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
let me just get into that. And so this.
You want to give a little introduction, Ellen, on this presentation?
Okay, Bill, as Larry said, he's my partner. He's also a member of the Orchid Society, but just does things once in a while, and since it's more mine. But he helped out when we got the orchids, knows how many there are, and just kind of got excited about having. He's a horticulturist to the max, and he just got excited when he saw all these and said, "Yeah, let's see if we can drum up some interest," and made this video.
And then
Plus, it's a little
also,
bit of his interest.
yeah, I think some of this video has been out already, and we've already generated some memberships from people watching this video.
Yes, we have two memberships, possibly 3. So and it's been out maybe 3 days, 4 days.
That would make another worthwhile article in the newspaper, to tell people that we are running even during COVID. And if anybody's interested in finding out more, to contact you, but they can also get on the mailing list and get emails about meetings and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe Carl, as we get to the point of wanting to open up these presentations, you could publish it in the newspaper like Ruth used to do when we were going to have an in-person meeting.
Yeah, definitely a good idea.
Okay, so we want to share the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay.
Greetings all. Welcome.
Okay, so can you see, everyone see the presentation now on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let me reshare it because I have to share it along with the audio that goes along with it. Which I forgot to do. And that's important that we get the audio. So let me try.
I could hear and see him, Larry. This is Kathy. I could see him and hear him.
Well, let me just, there's an option here that says share sound, and I just want to make sure that that's
Back to the Green Garden Guy show. Ordinarily, I'm talking about growing food. Sometimes talking about herbal medicine.
okay. So is everyone seeing and hearing that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, then I'll stop interrupting.
Grumpy Gardener. On occasion, we talk about the land itself and sometimes investments that might allow you to buy some land. Otherwise, I don't talk about flowers very often. That doesn't mean I don't raise them. I have a lot of flowers here, actually, and I am a firm believer in how important flowers are in a garden, whether the point is foods or not. It's really kind of irrelevant that way. Plus everything, almost everything except mushrooms flower anyway, and ferns. So there's flowers on avocados, flowers on citrus, you know, all sorts of things like that. But today I'm going to specifically talk about the orchid. We're right here on what's known as the Orchid Isle. And Hawaii barely had any orchids originally at all. The orchids that we have here were actually imported. They were brought here, and the vast majority of them love it. They love it here. Yes, some are spreading like weeds. Others minding their own business, but doing really well. This is the easiest place I have ever been on earth to raise orchids. And as things go, my partner, Ellen, is president-elect of the Hilo Orchid Society and also the membership chair. And so, and it is the largest organization of its type, citizens organization like that, around horticulture on the island. Doesn't get any bigger than the Hilo Orchid Society. Right here behind me, you'll see this dainty little guy. She's a beauty. I'm not an orchid expert, and so I can't tell you for sure exactly what variety this is. It looks like it's probably an Oncidium. I suspect the reason it's in the tree is because the tag was missing. Yes, usually the ones that lose the tag, so we can't figure out what the heck they are, but they're nice. They get hung up in trees, and on the sides of trees around this property, you will find hundreds of orchid plants dangling from the trees. Well, here we have one sticking off the bottom of my Page Tangelo hybrid here. She's really a beautiful red color. Orchids are that easy to grow around here. They're just literally hanging them in the trees. It's about all you have to do most of the time. Here's a beetle nut palm with a hana orchid hanging off it. These are extraordinary pretty flowers when they're in season. This beautiful autumn gold colored Oncidium is growing in a native Hawaiian hibiscus. This is the Waimea white. And when your ohias die from rapid ohia death, like this one did, you can always tie orchids on the stumps. Yes, sir. We got orchids here for every application. This little epilobium down here is basically operating as a ground cover, mixed with perennial peanuts. And right here we have a collection of some really nice small flowered orchids. Well, here we have a real nice kind of leopard spotted Oncidium. I believe this is another one that is lacking tags. This beautiful little thing here is one of the terrestrial orchids that grows on the ground. Well, this one right here is almost black. This is the type that loses all the foliage when it comes to bloom. It's one of the species orchids, I believe. Ellen has a passion, really, for the very wild types. This is definitely a wild form of dendrobium here, with these little cute white flowers on it. Here we have another one of those gorgeous little golden autumn leaf colored Oncidium. There's a cute little pink one. I don't even know what this is. It's lost its tag. It's sort of a fairy orchid. And of course, most of you know one of our favorite corsage orchid. This is the Cattleya. This one's just about to bloom. It's one of the volcano queens from Akasuka up here that they breed. Right at the moment, I don't happen to have any Cattleyas in flower, but they're one of the nice large flowered orchids. Blooms don't last very long, but they grow really well here. And of course, this is what you use for corsage, aka moth orchid. I think most people who've got an orchid plant at home, they probably know this one. They come in all sorts of colors. This is a pretty fantastic shade here. But it's one of the very commonly grown large flowered orchids, which makes pretty good houseplant orchids. They also grow outdoors fine around here, and they will make multiple spikes. This one is forking here and going to make another spike. It already bloomed one spike out here, and then another one pushed out here. They will reflower. On the Phalaenopsis, we do not cut down the flower spikes unless the flower spikes die. If we leave them up and in place, they'll tend to rebloom on the same spikes. Ellen likes to grow her Masdevallias on lava rocks. They do pretty well there. This one's sitting right here on our front porch. They have this sort of a flower. Cute little guys. Got some red flowered ones in here somewhere too, like that. Here we go. Yeah, here's a red one. It's sitting on a rock right there. And then we have this very cute kind of brick red colored orchid here. This one's an Oncidium. Again, tags are lost. And there's a story behind all that too. Here's the deal. As I said, Helen, belongs to the Hilo Orchid Society. She's in charge of membership and all that. Well, turns out one of the orchid growers here on the island decided that they were going to go out of business. And when they did that, they donated all of their stock. The entire inventory was donated to the Hilo Orchid Society. And this was one of the orchids, which I found in the mess the other day, that was completely unpotted, had no bark on it, was just laying there in the bench and was flowering. There was a couple others just like it doing the same thing. So a real tough little guy, but I loved his flower color, so I grabbed this out of the mix and I potted it and I put it out here on the porch so we can enjoy in the flowers that it makes. To give y'all some idea just what's happening here, here is a small fraction of the orchids that were brought in here to our place from the orchid farm. There are literally hundreds of them on these tables. There are all sorts. There's Cattleyas here, Dendrobiums, there's Oncidiums, you name it. There's just a whole lot of different kinds of orchids in the mix. All of them somewhat neglected because the farm was closing down. The entire works needs to be either transplanted to new containers and fertilized with the weeds pulled out, or they need to get hung up on a tree someplace. And so now this is only a tiny fraction. Okay, this is my one hoop house here. I believe this thing is about 25 feet long, and 12 feet wide. It's completely stuffed. There's no more room in here to hold any more orchids. There were so many orchids that I ran out of room in hoop houses. I ran out of room under shade cloth. I ran out of room on tables. And so here you will see we have some pretty nice looking Cattleyas and really some very large ones in places. Cattleyas that are on pallets under a starfruit tree. Well, these here managed to fit on legitimate tables. And over here we have Gracie. So here's more. There's more. There's more. They are sitting on little plastic tables. They are sitting on 5-gallon buckets under coffee trees. Orchids are everywhere. There are orchids everywhere. Even Gracie is saying, when are you going to get the heck out of here with all these orchids so I can get my table back, huh? Yeah, she used to like the sun on the table over there. There are orchids over here on the ground. There are more orchids over here behind the lime tree. Oh boy, looks like we got a Cattleya bloomed in purple. How's that look? Oh yeah, she's going to be a beauty. Starting to open. This one right here is one of Ellen's favorites. This is the coconut orchid. Isn't that thing just delightful? My front porch is filled with orchids. Most of the Paphiopediums ended up over here, the lady slippers. There's also some cattleyas in here too. Well, so perhaps you may be asking yourself, why is the Green Garden guy talking about orchids and flowers today? Well, I get two reasons. One, often when discussing food gardening, if I shift to flowers, it's probably a good 30% or so of people who are into food gardening who will get back to me immediately and say, oh, no, we don't do flowers. We don't waste garden space with that. It's only food, only food. And, well, I remember being there myself at once. When I was a novice gardener, my mother grew flowers. I grew jalapenos, you know. And so I didn't pay much attention to flowers either. And it wasn't until years later, after I'd gardened long enough in a spot, that I managed to kind of wear the soil down a bit, kind of burn it out, and needed to refresh the soil. I started using wildflower mixes as cover crops. I used them as green manure, and they were very effective. In fact, you know, like a Clyde Robbins basic wildflower mix or a Northrop King wildflower mix, they work out really, really well. After maybe 2 years or so of growing them in an area that had been pretty much exhausted, without applying any more fertilizer, I was actually able to grow crops of tomatoes and peppers just from the residue of the wildflowers. Okay, A is a good point, right? They're good for the ground in general. Now, this is not about orchids exactly, but then I realized once I started to put the vegetables back in these areas and the wildflower seeds would pop up around my vegetables as weeds, I'd leave some of them. You know, I weed some down, but I leave some going. They didn't hurt anything. And, well, people come by and they look in my garden and there'd be Shirley poppies and bachelor buttons and California poppies and all this stuff popping up in between my vegetable crops. And they go, Bill, you grow flowers with your vegetables? I go, oh, yeah, as if I thought of this myself, right? Yeah, I took credit for the idea, even though it was an accident. And I found out this impressed people. It seemed strange to them that we would mix flowers and vegetables together. Well, shortly I began to realize that those flowers were drawing in pollinators that I never had there. Things that wouldn't have come in because I had tomatoes or peppers would come in because I had poppies and other plants in between. And so I started getting all manner of pollinators, different butterflies, different types of pollinating moths, bees, I don't know, all sorts of insects that pollinate. And a lot of times, I mean, just flies and things. Then I found out, too, that the beneficials, like a ladybug, for instance, are drawn to the nectar of flowers. The carrot family is excellent for ladybugs. They love the nectar that comes from the carrot family, like dill or parsley or carrots, or well, one of the common ornamentals in that family. You see Queen Anne's lace, for instance, and other things like this. But the carrot family would draw them in. So would some of the herbs, thyme, and so on. And I realized that I was drawing in pollinators because of a lot of the flowers I was growing, as well as drawing in beneficial and parasitic type insects. And so I was enhancing the entire garden, not just physically, okay, by the pollination and the insect control. I was enhancing it here too, because I'd look out across a row, and a row of tomatoes is a nice thing to see, yeah, but a row of tomatoes has got flowers jutting out all over it with bees buzzing in them and so on. Way nicer to see. And so I am encouraging people who think that, no, I only grow food, I don't grow flowers. I'm encouraging them to plant flowers. We use marigolds here to keep the nematodes off my crops. They have dual purpose. The marigold looks real good out there and draws pollinators, but it also pushes away the pests. So there's a lot of good reasons for this. Now, I got the other reason, though, that I'm here yakking about orchids today in particular is because we have the Hilo Orchid Society. My partner is involved in the society. I'm a silent member. She pays for my membership, but I got little to say about the whole thing. The orchids are Ellen's deal, but they have all these orchids. Now, what I showed you just now, all these orchids I've got piled up around here on pallets and things, it's a small fraction of what was actually hauled off by the members. Anybody who had space was taking these orchids by the truckloads and bringing them to their places. So this is only a portion. And the Orchid Society has a public project. It's called the Orchid Isle Project. Very simple. And what they're doing is in public spaces everywhere that they can get into, they're tying orchids on trees. And so they're going to cover the whole east side of the island of Hawaii, I believe, with orchids. And so any place where it's possible, you know, where they can get permission and so on. Like, for instance, the Hilo Zoo has been festooned. That's where a lot of the orchids went. They have a house over there that they put them in, you know, and a lot of them will go up there. But they're going to go all over the place. And the society can use more membership. Personally, I think anybody who's really interested in orchids, you have come to the right place, because most of the commercial orchids that you find for sale on the mainland, if they weren't imported from places like Taiwan or other locations where they grow orchids for sale, then they probably came from the Big Island. Okay, we have orchid growers and orchid breeders all over the Puna and Hilo area. I mean, 2 houses down the street, my neighbor Ben, he's an orchid breeder. That's what he does. He's got big houses full of projects where he's creating brand new orchids. Now, he doesn't sell, you know, orchids in pots for the nursery industry direct to you folks. He sells them to the guys that take them and then work with them to get them into pots, put names on them, and send them back out. So he's really at the very far end of the food chain on this. Now, some people here, like at Kasuka, up the road, they not only breed and they have huge amounts of orchid houses there, but they do shipping and they do direct sales. You can walk right into Akasuka on the days they're open and buy orchids here. If you're touring the island and you're not from Hawaii, but you're on the Big Island, they have certified orchid plants and probably some of the better breeding you're going to find here. They really do some good work up there. So we got orchids all over the place. Okay, this place is just an orchid island. And so long before I ever moved here, both of us actually belonged to the society. I think one of the first trips we ever made, or second trips we ever made to Hawaii, we spotted the society having a meeting in the newspaper and decided to drop in. Well, it was all she wrote. After they stuffed me with food and then filled my arms with orchids, they said, hey, they're pretty nice people. I think we need to get to know them. Well, one thing led to another until Ellen is now, you know, definitely part of the society. And so if anybody is out there is interested in joining and, you know, would like to become part of the Orchid Isle Project, right now what we need is transplanting teams. We need teams to come in, sit down. I'm going to put up tables here actually for this purpose, and we're going to take everything out of the pots. We're going to pull the weeds off. We're going to inspect them, clean them up, and then put them back in fresh media, and then see that they get fertilized and watered properly. Or we're going to take a lot of them and just pull them right out of the pots and get teams to go out and start putting them on trees around the area. And so it's going to go 2 different directions. The ones that go into pots will later be used maybe at orchid sales, or they'll be given to the members of the Orchid Society. You know, we do that too. You can get the orchids from us, and or they're going to just become public one way or another, you know. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, if you'd like to volunteer to hang orchids on trees, you don't have to live here. You know, you want to come by on your vacation and spend a day over here on the Green Garden Guy's farm helping Ellen transplant orchids, hey, come on down. We got all kinds of stuff for you, but the society's great. They're really a bunch of nice people. It's something that I highly recommend people who like orchids or even just like flowers, you know. Yeah, get involved. There's a newsletter, there's a website. Like I say, you don't have to live here. We got members off island. I was once a member off island. But So I'm doing some recruiting, and I'll post Ellen's contact information. She's the one in charge of membership. It's peacetrain at Gmail. We'll get you to her. PECETRAIN at gmail.com. We'll get you through to Ellen if you're interested. She can get you to become a member. She can get you connected with the whole situation. You know, I'm just a mouthpiece. That's all I am. I'm over here talking about it, and I can see that the Orchid Society has used up every spare table, and even every old pallet under a tree around here. And so I want some of my space back. I need some help. We need some planting teams. We're thinking about 6-person planting teams, perhaps, is the idea. So there you go. That's the 2 reasons that I'm here talking about flowers and orchids today. 1, if you're not using flowers in your garden, oh man, come on, let's get with the program. It's part of nature, it's part of everything that happens, and your mind will be so glad. So will your nose. I walk out in the evenings and the Tahitian gardenia's blooming, or the angel's trumpet opens up, you know, and so I'm sitting resting on the porch as the sun's going down, inhaling the perfume of the night. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff involved. Your senses definitely involved here. All right, so aloha, everybody hang loose. I'm going to put some text in here, both down below, and I guess I'll put some across the screen too, if you want to make contact. Y'all have a great new year.
All right, Ellen and Bill, thank you very much for that nice video. I think I got a kick out of just seeing Bill's enthusiasm. So I guess one more thing, any last questions before we close this presentation? Okay, with that, I guess I wanted to, someone.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I'm definitely gonna, when I get the information, I'll get in touch with everybody. I definitely want to be involved with planting them in the trees. I have a most excellent orchard ladder, the 3-legged orchard, 12-footer, which they're really handy. You know, they're really safe for one thing, and mine's a 12-footer. They come larger than that, but I don't think too much larger is needed. But and so I've already been planting some on my own down by the soccer fields, Bayfront, because I'm down there once in a while, pretty often. And I was thinking, you know, because they got the sidewalks going there, you know, and occasionally tourists will walk around and people go down on bikes. And so there's quite a few trees around there. There's all the shower trees that they planted, and which are here and there and along the road. But there's also numerous other trees around, monkey pods and whatnot, you know, other types of showers. So I'm kind of feeling that I would, you know, I'd be inclined to put them in those trees down there. I've also, several years ago, I planted some at the Arboretum at DLNR Arboretum, and which has a bunch of wild ones growing there now, epidendrums and some cymbidiums, all growing wild in the trees. But there's room for more. There's a bunch of good trees down there that could take a bunch of orchids too. So anyway, when I get the information, I'll get in contact with you, and hopefully I'll be able to help out, you know, in whatever means.
That sounds really good. Thank you, Jeff. I was kind of looking at that and wondering if it was possible down on the bayfront there to put some orchids, and I'd like to get one other person and maybe have 3 people to do this and work out the logistics of being COVID safe. But I'm really glad to hear that you're putting some down there, because that means it's probably easier for us to put more.
I think the only thing I need is the permission to do it. That's the only thing that I was wondering about.
Yeah, I guess I gotta contact some people with the city or county of Hilo, or because I don't know who gets permission, but I'm sure I can find out.
Right, because some of that property is county land and some is state run. So I guess we got to contact both of them for their security reason, like
Yes.
our safety and whatever,
You guys, I think it's Randy Kubota.
On that, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think Randy Kubota is.
I was just gonna say the downtown.
He's the trails guy that was doing the new Bayfront Trails project.
And then I was going to say the downtown development or the downtown organization too. I don't know who's president now, but that's, they may have some say down in that area too.
Okay. And then coming from the Kona side, I guess you guys had some rain last week. We haven't had a drop for about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks already again. So we're limited where we can put things on the Kona side to places that have irrigation, or it has to be up Mauka.
Definitely.
What about the airport over there, the new reconstructed airport? What about around there?
Well, it's state, but you definitely have to find a place where they got irrigated, because I'm a mile straight above the airport. And like I said, it's been dry, bone dry. So
I think
that would be wonderful. Yeah, if we could get something going at the airport, it'd be really, really nice.
Yeah, Whitney had an idea of further up, I think, to put some orchids. But yeah, she's looking into having her in-laws come over next week to pick up some orchids. So it looks like if you guys want to get some in the airport, you'll have 100 or something to do that with.
Actually, you know what? I think I had him in school a million years ago, but the manager for the Kona airport, I know him from a long time ago. I could try and get a hold of him for Whitney and see about getting some permission to put some down by the airport.
Really good.
Julie, were you also referring to the old refurbishment area, or were you talking about the new airport, or both?
Donna, you've got a funny sounding thing. I couldn't understand a word you said.
Julie, she was asking whether you were talking about the old airport.
We were talking about.
No, the airport, that's the main airport that they've done a lot of remodeling and, renovating.
Yeah, because there's that nice rec area by the old airport too.
There is, but it's not watered. We had tried to put some around there at one point in time, but it was too dry right in that spot.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to wrap up the presentation, the Orchid Isle presentation. I have one apology to make for those members hoping to see Larry Zettler's presentation on the ghost orchid of Florida and Cuba. I guess Larry and I have talked, and we're going to see about rescheduling that presentation later in the year. So with that, I also want to mention that our next meeting is scheduled for February 12th, and our presenter will be Nina Rock, and she'll be doing a presentation on Sobralia orchids. And if I've seen right, I think she was sitting in on this meeting today. So
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, did you want to maybe give a little preview of your presentation?
Well, I'm happy to hear it's Sobralias. I wasn't sure which one you guys wanted me to speak about.
Okay.
It's good to know the topic. I've been growing Sobralias for a while. I've given many variations of Sobralia talks over the years, and I know some of you all grow them there. I'm living in Houston now. I've been here about 30 years, but I'm a displaced New Yorker originally. The talk goes over taxonomy a little bit of culture, history, an overview of the many species with an emphasis on the ones that we can actually get a hold of and grow. There are lots of really beautiful, rare ones, but I can show it to you once and you may never see it again in your lives. So it's not very helpful if you really want to grow some of them. Anyway, that said, if you're interested, I'd like to hear from anybody in advance also. If you're growing them now and you want to send me a slide or two, photos, I can include them in the presentation as examples of locally grown plants. It'd be fun. Oh, and I'm going to be there. I'm coming to Hilo on the 9th, I think. And then I'm coming to meet my daughter who just moved to Kurtistown, and then we're going to head over to Kauai on the 16th. So I hope to meet some of you the week that I'm in town. It would be great. Looks like, Ellen, you're pretty close to Punachix, where Elizabeth's living, and a few others. So, and I've met a few of you before on prior trips. I think Charles, you and I've met, and certainly you have a displaced Texan there among you as well, but I don't think he's online anymore. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Nina.
Sure.
I guess I do have one nursery that would like to extend an invitation for a visit for you while you're here.
Great.
And I also wanted to share that Nina is a birder. So if
Yes.
there are any members that maybe want to take her out on a hike to do some birding, she would really appreciate it, or have some ideas on where I might be able to take her while she's here on her visit. So you can reach out to me and I'll do some coordination.
Great.
All right. I guess with that, this is our portion for show and tell. So does anybody want to lead off for show and tell?
I'll be right back. I'll be right back with one.
Okay. I know people are being shy. Usually we gotta.
I got some.
Okay.
Matthias says he has something too.
I'll go with Matthias.
I guess Matthias, you have the floor if you wanna.
Yeah, I had to
So-
unmute. I'm sorry. I had to unmute. All right. How do I switch this around? Here. All right. Well, I bought 12 years ago from Hilo Orchid Farm a Angrecum crestwood. I bought like 200 plugs and I kept one, and it's coming into flower. There's some damage on it because I power washed my plants because I had so much algae on it and I damaged my buds. But this plant has 17 spikes coming and 54 flowers. So it's 12 years in the making. It's not all the way open, but this is how the flowers basically look like. There's a lot of buds on top here that are not quite there yet. And I do have some unfortunate spotting on the leaves. This is because we have the 95% humidity here, which is really hard to battle that. So that is one plant. And then my second plant I like to show is one of my seedlings of one of my own crosses that I made and that I named after my mother. I kept 4 of them for their distinctive coloring. So this one is Ingrid Seelis Peach Parfait. It has 3 beautiful spikes on it. It's an incredible color. Shape is decent. It's a little bit, you can see through the petals, so the substance might be not the best one. But why I really like it, and then I'm not usually so particular about it, is the fragrance. But man, this one, the fragrance is amazing. I mean, I'm standing here the entire time with the presentation right behind the plant, and I'm intoxicated by the fragrance of this plant. It's very unique, and it's a very good bloomer. It actually has 4 flowers per 4 and 3 per stem. And it's a really beautiful color. I absolutely love this one. And then the last plant that might be hard for you guys to see, because everybody thinks, of course, I'm only doing Cattleyas. This is a Pleurothallus ankyloglossa. It came out of nowhere. It has these pendant long spikes. The flowers are open, so they look like they're just about, I would say, 1/3 of an inch apart, but that's how the flowers are. There's another one right here, shorter spike. It's really cool looking. I saw that online and I got my hand on this plant, and it's just an amazing little thing because it's pendant. You see, when you see the whole plant, it's like a chandelier kind of thing. And this is a second flowering, so I have like 8 spikes on it. It's a species. I think it's from Ecuador, if I'm not mistaken. Something different. That's what I have to show today. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to meet you, Nina. I'm really looking forward to it. So you got to come and visit my nursery, and I got to show you my Zobralias that they have all over in the ground. And
I will try. Can you send me some photos in advance? That would be great.
I certainly will do so.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Nice meeting you. Aloha.
All right, next for show and tell.
I'll go. I got this dendrobium here. Am I unmuted or muted?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay. This one, this is a dendrobium hybrid. Somebody's Alexandria by Brasilensis. Anyway, Tom, I got from Tom, I got this way cool epidendrum, centropetalum. Can you see that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just started blooming for me. I've had it not quite a year. And it's nice. Look at his long stems and everything. And I just added to what he had it growing on, which is just a slab of wood. And so I added to it, wrapped it with burlap, and I got 3 blooms going on it. I got this other dendrobium, which is Tiny Bubbles, which I got from Karen Kimmerly. This is a wonderful plant. This is blooming probably half of the year. This is in bloom. And something you may not have seen before, which is I don't know if you can see these. Marmalika?
Marmalika ringens.
Ringens, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little singular flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a few of them. It blooms throughout the year. There's almost at any time you can see a flower or 2 on it.
Hmm.
And returning this month also is the Calanthe or Japonica. Right here, we can see that. And this was that Phaeus crossed with microburst, they're calling it. It's Tankerville by Pulchra. This one right here. Still going. It was there last month and it's still going. These are keepers. And some other Cattleya there. But that's mine for the month.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and thank Bill for that wonderful presentation. That was really good. That was real good. That was great.
Nice. I will definitely let them know. Thank you.
So Ellen, I thought you brought some in.
Yeah. Here it is. I know a few people out there probably recognize. Can you recognize the name of, recognize what this is? I can't find the tag. But it's gotten, this is a colander. And I remember when this just had one stem of flowers, and it's gotten so big, and I was so excited when I first got it. And now it's just got a jillion flowers. I think I got one in red that I bought from Matthias, and maybe another color too.
I think that's Dendrochilum glumaceum. There's different color ones. There's white and there's more orangish or pale salmon color ones.
Yeah, and I think there's might be a yellow one too, because but I haven't seen them bloom. I just got those two, waiting for them to bloom. But this one was big. Wow.
Anyone else for show and tell?
I've got something.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm on my tablet. I'm not the computer, so I don't know how well it's showing up. But this has 1, 2, 3, 4 blooms on it. Just brought it in from the shade house today. Now, this was one of those plants we got, I guess it's 2 years ago now, from Sunset Valley Orchids when we did the big group order. And it's still in a relatively small pot. It's in the, I guess it's a 2-inch pot. And it's BLC Kaboom SVO for Sunset Valley Orchids cross BLC William Farrell Native Sun. And it, in person, it looks just like little daffodils. I think it's really cute. It's pale yellow with deeper yellow in the throat.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, with wrapping up show and tell, that wraps up our meeting for today. I appreciate everyone signing in today and participating in today's meeting. Reminder, our next meeting is February 12th, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Everybody have a good day and wish you guys the best.
Thank you, Carl.
Aloha.
Aloha,
Thank you,
Carl.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry and Carl. Good meeting. Glad to be here.
All right.